So here's our podcast. It's Creatures of the Night. I'm Chris.
And I'm Wendy.
Okay, how about that?
Done.
It's
we
nice
did
and
that.
easy.
Let's move on. Let's talk about cool shit.
Yeah. So I do have something cool to talk to you about. I had posted some pictures on Instagram not too long ago. I went to this tour in Rollinsford, New Hampshire, and it was the town hall. I had taken my husband to go fishing. Rollinsford, it's a small town in the woods. I didn't even know it existed, but he's finding all these fishing spots. So he's like, you'll love it. There's a graveyard over there. You could drop me off. You can go wander around the graveyard. And I'm like, you are speaking my language. Let's go.
And that's why you two have been married for so long. Like,
right.
He really gets you.
He does. Yeah. And he was not kidding. That graveyard was really wild. It was a really wild graveyard. 1800s and the stones, someone is going in there and is realizing that these stones are falling apart and they're picking them up and they're propping them up. So some of them have had some work done on them. You can see where they've been like rebolted and reframed and stuff like that. But someone is actually noting that, okay, these other ones are falling apart. Let's at least put it back up so it's not just on the ground getting destroyed by the weather, the elements, or animals, whatever. But the graveyard was amazing. I wandered around it for a little bit. There was another graveyard on the other side of the street. I go over there and wander around it for a little bit. Got a creepy vibe. And then I left.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was like I got this, you shouldn't be here. And like I'm also a paranoid person anyways, but someone had parked across the street and had stayed there the entire time I was wandering around this like part of the graveyard. And I'm like, that's just so weird. I mean, there's nothing for them across the street. There's some kind of a ball field, and there's signs all over there that say no parking. When I parked next to the graveyard, I parked next to the graveyard, like there was no sign that said no parking. But in the ball field, it says absolutely no parking anytime, blah, blah, blah. So they parked there and I didn't know what was going on. I went back to my car. I got in my car. And the moment I started backing up, they split. I'm like, man, were they watching me? Were they wondering what I was doing? So I just got a creepy vibe. So I left the graveyard and was going back to pick up Brandon. And I took a wrong turn. And this town is so little. It has like 2 streets. Of course, I took the wrong turn. But it was like magic because I took this wrong turn and came across this historic house. It's the Colonel Paul Wentworth house. Man, I saw his grave in the graveyard that I was wandering around in.
That's so cool that you had noticed that and then stumbled upon his house like that.
I know. I was like, this is crazy. I drive around over there. I see that this house is open on Sundays for tours. And I'm like, I am going to have to check this out. I got home and I Googled that house and I found out, like I said, that Colonel Paul Wentworth house, they do tours there on Sundays, 1 to 5. I think it's only like a $5 admission. And a lot of the times the ladies will get all dressed up in yes, it's so cute. I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to check this out. And best of all, this house that I haven't seen yet, I'll get to that in a minute. I found out that it was originally built in New Hampshire. They took it down board by board, moved it to Boston. And then when they were like done with Boston, they're like, you know what, let's go back to New Hampshire. Took it back down board by board and brought it back to New Hampshire. This house has been around. It's so funny because Wendy wasn't recording this earlier. We were just talking about RVs, but like this, they were just like, need something on wheels. They were doing the original RV back in the day, moving this house back and forth.
I actually don't know if any of our stories ever covered it, but I run into that a lot when researching some of our stories, and they're older ones like that, is that people would just move houses like that, but they don't do that kind of shit anymore. They're just like, yeah, we need this space for something else. Just tear that bitch down. But in the day, they were like, that's good wood. We're not wasting that. Took me forever to get that molding right. Just pick that bitch up and let's go.
I don't blame them. I mean, seriously, when I've finished making something with my own hands, I'm like, this is the most, I look at my pictures behind me. It's not beautiful by any means, but I made this. It's like, I'm going to hold on to this forever. The art of Chris Duncan will hang in these walls, until we move. But I would be that same way. I've seen that a lot in New Hampshire too. And you've mentioned this before, where they're just like, I don't necessarily like this spot on this hill. So they just take the house and they move it to the other hill that's across the street. And they're like, yeah, this view is way better. But it was interesting to me that they took it down from New Hampshire, went all the way to Boston, and then all the way back. So I thought that was cool. I haven't gotten a chance to tour that house yet. I planned to. But anyways, when I was Googling that house, I found out about town hall was giving tours like 2 weeks from the day that I found that Paul Wentworth house, and they were free. And I'm like, shit, I don't know anything about this town, but they're like, it's a rare event. The town halls from the 1800s. We never open it up to the public. I'm like, done. That's all you had to say.
Yeah.
I'm there. So I roll up there, and I'm like, I can't believe like how I do things, because like I planned on getting there bright and early. I had to register too, by the way. And that's only because they just wanted to gauge how many people were coming, and they split it into 2 groups. So they had a 9 o'clock and they had a 10 o'clock. And I got the email back and she said, you're registered for the 10 o'clock. I'm like, sweet, I can actually sleep in too. Not like I ever do, but hey, okay, I'll give this one a shot. I had to get air in my tires before I go. Totally forgot. So I'm like leaving. I'm like, oh yeah, the whole air in the tires thing. So I get air in the tires, and then it's like, I really only have 10 minutes to get there. And Google says, it's going to take about 14. So I'm like, I gotta go.
Oh
so
my
I
God.
scoot my way down there. And believe it or not, they had a spot in front of the town hall for my van. It was like they were holding it for me. There was lots of other spots that were already taken, but this spot was like, it was like the size of my van. So I'm like, this is sweet. Hop out and I head up there. And I go into the building, and the lady, as soon as I open the door and walk in, she's like, oh, and you are Christine? And I'm like, oh my God, how does she know this? Is this also a psychic tour? And 2 guys walk in the door just behind me, and she goes, and our last 2, such and such. I was like, oh, okay. It's because those are 2 dudes. She wasn't like having a guess which one's Christine. That had to be me. So,
well, I just figured you were the last person to show up. So she's
I know.
Like, we've been waiting on you.
Waiting on you. That's kind of how I felt. But then when those other 2 dudes walked in, I was like, okay, sweet. I wasn't like the last person. And no, even after they got the tour rolling, more people showed up that had registered for the earlier tour and then just decided to show up whenever they fucking felt like it. So that's how you roll in Rollinsford. But the tour was excellent, Wendy. This building was beautiful. And the historian that was doing the tour was a funny guy, really knowledgeable, and, just made the tour a really interesting tour anyways. But so I got to tour the upstairs. When you walk upstairs, they've got all the doors shut so you can't see anything, and he's giving you the history lesson. And one of the original building spires is standing right there. It apparently had fallen off during a storm, so it's no longer on top of the building, but it's, sitting right there. And he's talking about the intricate design on the spires and all of the woodwork, everything that you just mentioned. And then he opens up these 2 doors. By the way, these doors are already massive doors. They open up these 2 doors into this like gymnasium / auditorium. And it was just beautiful. It had a stage behind, when you turned around and looked behind you, there was a huge balcony, they wouldn't let us go up there because it was a little unsafe, but still a super cool tour. All it took was me devoting like an hour of my time. And so I was going to go to the Paul Wentworth house the next day because they only do those tours on Sunday. But then I got bad news that my house in Tennessee, my historic house, had some issues. So
that's one of those houses that you'd be like, nah, just tear that shit down. We don't need to take that one anywhere.
Yeah. I've been debating that. I think that's where we need to go with it. But yeah, so I haven't made it to the other tour yet. I plan on doing it. So one day, you guys that follow us on Instagram, you'll see some more pictures of that Paul Wentworth house, because I'd like to see these ladies all dressed up in their Puritan style clothing or whatever. They do sewing days. So they show you like how they actually make their dresses and things like that. I'm like, oh, I love these ladies. I might have to join in their clique. Like I've got time to sew some dresses. Nope. But still, it was really cool.
Dreams. That is really, really cool. And I can't believe they're only $5. I love that stuff.
I know. There is even like a craft cider place around the corner in an old mill that's right up against like where my husband wants to go fishing and stuff. So it's a cute town.
Oh, it sounds adorable. Minus the creepy guy at the cemetery.
That was so weird. And I don't know if they were just lost and they were like just pulling up maps or whatever. And it just the timing,
Yeah, like it just worked out weird. It could just be that. They probably were just lost and checking their phones and happened to leave at the same time. We're going to tell ourselves that. But, yes. Keep your knife close.
That's right. Like I normally do. But I saw that and I'm like, yeah, I can't let myself get freaked out by this one incident because I plan on going back. I want to go to that house and visit it. And I'm going to tour the graveyard a little bit more because I got an eerie feeling in the back of the graveyard while I was going through there. It was just a neat place. It had that amazing wrought iron all around it. It was like your typical Halloween themed, graveyard. It was like, ooh, spooky, spooky. I love it. So that was my interesting thing from a couple weekends ago.
Well, that's still a lot more interesting than my last couple of weekends, so I dig it. I've tried to tour. We have nothing necessarily in town that offers tours like what you're talking about, but we have a couple of ranches and these like old mining towns that have been abandoned and stuff like that. And so every weekend I'm like, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go do that. And every weekend I go out to like run an errand real quick. I sweat all my clothes off and I'm like, or not.
Or not.
I'll just keep waiting. So I'm really hoping by October that it cools down enough. It was really nice last night, but this isn't, night is not when you're going to these things. But I feel like we're getting there so that I can start doing that stuff. But, I toured a cemetery. I sent you the pictures and you posted them.
Yeah.
There's not that many cemeteries in Arizona. I don't know where everybody goes, but
wow.
I don't know if I'm missing them or what, but I just happened to luck up on this one and it's not too far from where I live and it was really beautiful. But yeah, I had the same kind of experience of going through there and I saw like a creepy vehicle and I was like, wait, what are they doing in here?
Yeah.
And it makes you like, I am by myself just wondering the cemetery, how many people come back here?
Right.
So...
Well, there's another cemetery that we go to often because it also has a spot to put your kayaks into the water. So there will be people out there grilling and fishing and putting their kayaks in the water, and it's in the back of a cemetery. So there's a lot of people hanging out at that one.
Well, it's New England. I'm not really surprised. So.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And there's another old mill over there too. So yeah, no kidding.
It's just littered with mills and graveyards everywhere.
Pretty much it is. There was one thing that you just said that reminded me of something. You were talking about you're sweating all your clothes off in Arizona. Well, when I went to this tour this day, it turned out to be cold and rainy. And I wasn't really quite prepared to have to like bundle up. I'm not, I'm still in like flip-flop mode. I mean, it didn't even reach 60 today. So we're already like in fall type air. Yeah. And this morning was similar. So I had a tank top on and then I put a shirt on top of it. It's a button-up shirt. It's really cute. It's got the roll-up sleeves. I'm like, yeah, this works. And the jeans. And then I have to do the shoes and the socks because it's colder out than I thought. And I'm like, I need a coat still too because it's cold. So I have the coat on, the button-up shirt, the tank top, jeans, socks, shoes. Okay, good. We can go. When I got back in the car, I had realized that like half of the buttons on my shirt had either come undone or I was like halfway dressed. When I showed up and they're like, Christine? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. They're like, damn, this bitch is fucking crazy. Maybe she should have taken a little bit more time to get herself prepared in the morning. They didn't seem to mind. But it was just like when I realized when I was sitting in the car that half of the buttons on my shirt were undone, I'm like, damn, you look a hot mess. That's awesome.
They were just so appreciative that you were coming.
I guess so. They were really sweet. And they didn't say anything to me about my choice of clothing either or the way that I wore it. So, but anyways, would you like to hear a story?
I'd love to hear a story.
All right. Well, I have some haunted stuff to tell you about. So I guess I'll skip talking about wardrobe for now and move on to better things. So my story today is one that is already known. You know it, but I've never covered it in detail before. I've talked to you about it thousands of times, Wendy, but this is the first time I've researched it fully, and it's dark. So, the Salem witch trials. Have you heard about them?
I'm like racking my brain thinking about stuff that we've talked about on the podcast or whatever. This is not what I thought you were going to say, but.
So the Salem witch trials was a pretty horrible thing. It happened here in Massachusetts back in 1692. And just to catch everyone up, for anyone new to this story, the Salem witch trials were a series of hearings and prosecutions of people that were accused of witchcraft in between February 1692 and May of 1693. More than 200 people were accused, 19 of whom were found guilty and executed by hanging, 14 women, 5 men. One other man, Giles Corey, was crushed to death for refusing to plead, and at least 5 other people all died while in jail. It was the deadliest witch hunt in the history of colonial North America. So now that we're all on the same page, you should also know that the actual witch trials were not really held in Salem, rather in what was then known as Salem Village. Salem Village has long since changed its name and has been known as Danvers, Massachusetts, since 1752. I can only assume that that was done in order to disassociate from the terrible history that it had become so famous for, much like Nathaniel Hawthorne dropping that E or whatever he did to disassociate himself from his great-great-great-granddaddy or whoever he was. I don't know. I'm just throwing that in there. The trials were held in what was known as the Meeting House and at Hawthorne Hill, which was about a mile down the road from the original Meeting House, was where the home of Salem witch trial judge John Hawthorne had once resided. So over time, the Meeting House was abandoned, dismantled, and removed to another site until the lumber decayed and became mixed with the soil. And in 1874, isn't that beautiful? I'm sorry, I just had to leave that in there. It's decayed and became mixed.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of like, really? We just talked about moving houses all around.
Yeah, I know.
What shitty wood did they pick to build their house? Like it's decayed and returned to the soil.
Birch. Had to be birch, right? Isn't that birch tree? Isn't that the one that like flakes off like pieces of paper?
Yeah, it does do that. I don't know, like in the center, how solid it really is.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That's just odd to me. That we just talked about, these houses, they were built so great. Of course, you're going to tote them around and keep moving them. And this one's like, yeah.
They built that one with fertilizer, and they're just like, well, it's good for the ground anyways.
They must have placed it in a swamp, and that's what happened.
So once the Meeting House was no longer in 1874, Hawthorne Hill became the chosen place for the new state-of-the-art Danvers State Hospital.
Wait.
Yes.
Are you going to stay on the Salem trials? Are you going?
I'm going Danvers State Hospital.
Okay, this guy.
Okay.
I mean, both would have been exciting. So
I know.
But
I know. That's when you started getting excited about the witches. I'm like, oh man, she would have liked for me to do that one. I talk about them so much that I figured that by now she'd be like, damn it, Chris.
And so many people have heard that story or have some idea of it as well. But I mean, I love all of it. You know how greedy I am. So.
I know, right? Give me it all. So, as you probably could tell, it was off to a pretty gloomy beginning, and they haven't even broken ground for the new hospital yet. Construction finalized on the building in 1878 and was quite beautiful with its Gothic-style spires and intricate red brick. The idea for this facility was that it would be self-sustaining, meaning everything that would be needed would be on site. The overall design, as seen from the air, made it look like a bat in mid-flight.
I've never heard that before. That's really cool.
It is really cool. And if you look at it, like the pictures, I see what they're saying because it's got like this one centralized building and then everything else kind of broke out going backwards like a bat in mid-flight. The layout supposedly helped draw breezes through the entire facility. Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride was known for his ability to create a humane and compassionate environment for his patients. He believed that beautiful settings restored patients to a more natural balance of the senses. Dr. Kirkbride's plan, aka Kirkbride, influenced in one form or another almost every American state hospital by the turn of the century, including Danvers. At a cost of $1.5 million, the hospital originally consisted of two main center buildings with housing for the administration, with 4 radiating wings on each side of the administration block.
Who wants that? Who wants to never get away from their job? End of the day, 5 o'clock, you're like, I just need a breather. And these people can't get away from it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I felt that way when I first watched this movie called The Skeleton Key. And basically, she is a hospice nurse. I believe it's a hospice nurse. But she's taking care of somebody who's, doesn't really seem to be doing a lot. He's kind of like on the downward slope, and she's living there. And this house is fucking awesome. Plus, it's haunted. So it's like, yeah, sign me up. But then she has to get woken up all the time and like do work things. And I'm like, man, you can't like have your bottle of wine, read your book, and like completely zone out because you always have to be
like on it.
Work. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely nursing was not the way for me to go because I couldn't do that. And I've often thought about it. It seems like a good field to be in. You're helping someone
Oh my
constantly, you
gosh.
know?
Yeah. There's plenty of times throughout, because I work in healthcare, there's plenty of times that I'm like, I should go back to school and be in
Yeah.
nursing. And then I realize what a bad student I am. So,
I know, right? Look, I have books that I want to read that I don't sit down and read.
exactly. I mean, I wait until the last minute to write my podcast. So I can't get through college.
Right. We have other things that we got to do. Ghost hunting. The kitchen, laundry, chapel, and dormitories for the attendants were in a connecting building in the rear. On each side of the main building were the wings for male and female patients, respectively. The outermost wards were reserved for what were considered to be the most hostile of their patients. So most of the buildings on campus were connected by a labyrinth of underground tunnels so that they could remain self-sufficient during the wintertime. New England. So that was actually a good idea. They didn't want to have to deal with the snow. Just went underground.
Yeah, super good idea.
It was. There was a tunnel that ran from a steam-powered generating plant and started at the bottom of the hill and ran all the way up to the hospital. The original plan was designed to house 500 patients with attic space, which would potentially house 100 more. But by the late 1930s and into the 40s, over 2,000 patients were being housed.
Shit.
Yeah, 2,000 in a place where only 500, possibly 600 people.
If you put them in the attic, I mean, like.
Yeah, if you put them in the attic, sure. Right. So overcrowding was severe, to say the very least. People were now even being held in the basement of the Kirkbride at this point. That couldn't have been very pleasant.
No.
While the asylum was established to provide residential treatment and care to the mentally ill, its functions expanded to include a training program for nurses in 1889 and a pathological research laboratory in 1895. By the 1920s, the hospital was operating school clinics to help determine mental deficiency in children, and while all seemed to be advancing well enough, it was becoming a very frightening experience for those that were on the inside. Reports soon began circulating about the various inhumane therapies, drugs, and straitjackets that were being used to keep the crowded hospital under control. Administrators begged the state for money to build more rooms and hire more staff, but help never came. Patients were noted as walking through the hallways naked and living in their own filth from a lack of basic hygiene. People weren't being cured. Instead, their symptoms only got worse.
Oh, you don't say.
I
It's
know,
not a
right?
healthy environment for them at all. And why? Why are they always naked? We talked about that in Lynchworth. I mean, like, where'd their clothes go?
I know. Well,
They're probably filthy
they were.
and went for wash and never came back, or they get tattered and they can't get new ones and stuff like that. Or they just take them off and there's nobody to control them.
Yes, that's exactly where I think it kind of went. They were totally overcrowded and way understaffed. I mean, 2,000 people, and there was one thing that I read where on one night there was only 9 nurses working.
Whoa.
The fuck? So that's how,
Whoa.
like, people are just like, they're there for a reason, I hope, because of this mental illness, not just because someone's like, fuck you, grandma, peace, and they just left them there. They have a mental instability and they need constant attention, and they were completely understaffed for that type of need.
yeah.
You know,
I mean,
So-
grandma needs attention too, though.
oh yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
but no, I'm saying 2,000 people. I don't know if that's 2,000 mentally ill patients. I bet you $1 million. Plenty of people were, dropping off grandmas and uncles and kids they didn't want to deal with anymore.
No. And it was a variety of people, Wendy. You're right. It was the mentally ill. It was the people that other people couldn't handle anymore. And then, like I said, there were also very hostile people working, or not working, but they're
The workers
hospital.
probably got hostile too.
I bet they were.
I'm sure they were pretty frustrated.
I get hostile at work. I completely understand it. And I don't have to deal with 2,000 people. I just, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, there was a variety of shit happening there. And it's just a really sad, historic part of our lives. So that's where I'm taking you today on this story. Buckle in.
Thanks.
You're welcome. In 1939, the medical community was looking for a permanent fix to the crisis facing mental health facilities. The population of Danvers Hospital had then swelled to 2,360, And sadly, a total of 278 people died at the hospital that year. Shock therapy, hydrotherapy, and electroshock treatments, along with straitjackets, had already become the norm. And the logic being that jolts of electricity should either alter a patient's brain or make the patient so afraid of shock therapy that they would just be scared into submission. I mean, you got me there. If I knew that that was coming, dude, I'm good. It's all good. But I mean, that part really frustrated me that was actually their way of thinking. So, I took this whole section and was talking to my husband about it, and he's like, that's just, they had no idea back then. They were trying everything, and they're just like, either it'll work or it'll scare them enough to they're just like, okay, yeah, it worked. I'm like, yeah, but I just can't wrap my head around it,
Well, I don't know. I think it's also lazy practice, the easy way out. Let's jolt them with this electricity, and they'll either set their ass straight or it's going to right. Totally reset them. That's what it is. Never mind the years of therapy that is actually needed and, just all kinds of making adjustments. But I mean, it's just the things that we know now and how we handle things. It takes so much time and effort. It really does.
That's the key.
Or medicine.
That's the key. Or medicine, right?
They have come a long way with that. They weren't doing that kind of stuff. They wanted to turn them and burn them. It's like, let's get them out. So let's find a quick fix for this.
Right. That was very much so the policy here. I think they just had so many people and so many problems that they were just, they weren't taking the time to let's sit down and have a chat about what's going on with you. And maybe they were, but it was a very, like you said, it's constant churning of people, revolving door. It's like this revolving door kind of method. Let's go. We got more people to see, more people to shock. Let's just go. Let's do this.
Well, I don't know how much time they actually took to study the patient so much as they did take whatever the family was saying. And that was it.
Right.
This person's crazy. I'm not going to listen to that person. But you tell me what's going on. Somebody who doesn't even know,
Right.
So.
Yeah. So when they misbehaved, they were put into straitjackets and forgotten. So back to what you were saying. I don't think that they were doing a really good job of sitting down and actually trying to cure them. Naturally, the shock therapy failed, so they resorted to a much more terrifying means of therapy, and that was the lobotomy.
Great.
Medical science saw lobotomies as a cure for anyone's insanity and the way to stop the deaths. So now let's cue in the mad doctor, who just happened to be Danvers' very own Dr. Walter Freeman. In 1936, the good doctor was a surgeon who was known for his technique of cutting into the brain of a patient and severing the frontal lobes and the thalamus. I apologize if I said that wrong. I didn't actually look it up. I'm not a doctor. I am a podcaster. I also do customer service for my day job. It has nothing to do with anything doctor-like. So
Right, yeah. And my doctors don't do brains, so I have no idea.
So, all right. We're going to go with thalamus on this one, but basically it's a lobotomy, right? Keep in mind, not all mental patients would even exhibit any violent tendencies, but this surgery was viewed by many as being a cure-all. So lobotomies for all. The goal was to make patients more manageable, but the results were mixed at best. Dr. Freeman unfortunately decided that the surgery took way too long, so he adopted a method used in Italy that eliminated the need to cut or drill. And yeah, this is brutal. You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Freeman would take an ice pick and shove it into the inner corner of a patient's eye, and then punch it through their skull to reach the brain. Finally, he would stir the frontal lobe until it was no longer functional. And I just want to let you know, everything that I read was a lot more graphic than that. So I tried to cut it down so that let's not give you the mental image as much as possible. That's just it. That's what happened. Oh, and he did this all without giving his patients an anesthetic. Also, he never wore gloves or a mask. I assume all of that would have just slowed him down. And apparently this dude was just like, let's go. So
yeah, he's like, oh, no. This isn't a big deal. Just lay down.
Right.
Did he not give them gas at least?
Not from what I could tell.
Just restrain them and that's it? Oh, no.
Yeah, I think that's that's all that I have. So I have to assume that's exactly how it went. Now, I could be completely wrong. Maybe he did gas him up, but
Well, it
I
doesn't
don't know.
matter. I mean, the whole situation's bad, but I'm just
Yeah.
like, wow. I had eye surgery when I was like a teenager, and they tried to tell me that they could do it in the office with me awake. And I said, you are out of your mind. Since
Right,
you are not
exactly.
coming near my eyeballs with instruments, and I'm not freaking out.
Right.
So they had to put me under with a light anesthetic at the hospital, and they were all like pissy about that I insisted on that. But I thought they were nuts.
Yeah.
That they thought they could work on my eyeball with me
No,
awake.
I am on your side with that. I'm totally on your side. Like my husband, he's like, if we had the money, he would get corrective eye surgery done. And I'm like, not me. Fuck that noise. I heard you have to keep your eyes open. And they're like, well, duh, that's how they do it. I'm like, hell to the nope. I have to watch them coming at me like that? There's no fucking way. I'd pass out. I'd black out. They'd be like, wake her up. She's got to be awake for this. Then nope, I can't deal with that. That's way too much stress. I would have been a terrible lobotomy person. Or either this guy was so quick that it was just boom, bang, boom, in and out. He did actually become so proficient at this procedure that he took it on the road. He traveled around in a vehicle he called his lobotomobile and visited other mental institutions where he would train the staff on how to perform this technique. This dude was a real nut job. At every institution he visited, he offered to perform lobotomies for the significantly low price of just $25 a patient.
What year is this? That's the equivalent of $400 now. That's what I'm going to say. That's a regular specialist visit.
This is like the 40s.
Yeah. 20.
So,
yeah. I'm going to say that. $500.
I think so. We're going to go with $500.
Yeah.
This day's money. Many of these patients lost the ability to feed themselves or use the restroom on their own. 15% of these patients died. Others relapsed. So Freeman would get to do the procedure all over again.
Wait. Why? It didn't work the first time. And you'd go back to him and pay him another $25. What's he breaking now in there?
Well, I don't know if there was a warranty. I didn't see that.
I seriously doubt it.
But here's where things got a little gruesome. In 1951, at Iowa's Cherokee Mental Hospital, reporters were there to cover his miraculous surgery. Freeman stopped in the middle of the procedure so he could pose for the cameras. His ice pick slipped, going too deep, which immediately killed the patient. So everyone was there to witness this. So I had imagined that if he had been giving them any kind of gas or anesthetic, something that would calm them, they would have seen it and it would have been documented. And I didn't have that information. I just saw that he wasn't giving me anesthetic. And then he's like, and look, Ma, no gloves.
Oh. And how does he play this off? I wonder if he was just like, well, this patient was too ill, didn't work. Or he was like, oops, that's not supposed to happen.
I think that was dunsies for the doctor because everybody was there to see it. And they were just like, what the fuck?
Okay, good. I'm so sorry. I thought you were going to tell me everybody was like, wow, this is an amazing procedure. Too bad that one didn't work out. No, they were like, what are you doing? Okay, good.
Bring in the backup. We still got to take pictures, guys. Come on, get them rolling in here.
Get another crazy woman in here, or person, whatever.
Anyone will do. Just walk him on in. His son later admitted in a PBS interview that the ice pick he initially used was from their family kitchen. Yeah, it's so bad, right? It's like, wait, honey, where are the knives? Where's the fork? Oh, you know what? Let's just try this ice pick. Yeah. Freeman performed 3,500 lobotomies in 23 states during this obscene sideshow. So his deal ended, and it seemed like really that was only because of Thorazine, which is a chemical lobotomy, had rolled out in 1954. So the real lobotomies ended at Danvers at that time. Medicine, it's a great thing, I guess. A chemical lobotomy versus an actual one. I mean, because you can always stop taking the pill if you need to.
Right, unless it has long-term effects.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Because that's what the lobotomy was doing. It was a permanent situation.
Oh, yeah.
Destroying a part of your brain. So this medicine, like, did it do that? Or it was like happy pills, like people take now?
I don't know. It was controversial, and I don't exactly know why. I've heard the name Thorazine before. I assume it's still around, but I could totally be wrong. It's just, I guess one of the reasons why the actual lobotomies ended at Danvers. So by the 1960s, and as a result of deinstitutionalization, the inpatient population started to decrease. The lack of funding continued. Buildings fell into disrepair, which made the bad conditions there even worse. Massive budget cuts prompted the hospital to begin closing wards and facilities, and by 1985, the majority of the original hospital wards were either closed or abandoned. The entire campus was closed on June 24th, 1992, and all patients were either transferred out into the community or to other facilities. A lawsuit had been filed by a local preservation fund with the hopes of saving the abandoned hospital from demolition, including the Kirkbride building, which was now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Though this did not stop the process. Demolition of most of the buildings began in January 2006. By June of the same year, all of the Danvers State Hospital buildings were torn down. The historic Kirkbride was also demolished, with only the outermost brick shell of the administration area, along with the G and D wards on each side, being propped up during demolition and construction, while an entirely new structure was built behind and inside of it. Isn't that weird? So I don't know. I've never taken you up to the building itself, but we've passed it on the interstate 1,000 times, and you can see that massive sprawling building out there. And when you drive up to it, you see that Gothic style, outer exterior. And this whole time I thought it was the actual building, but that's not true. They gutted it. They took everything. They had to. I guess it was just destroyed. Years of being abandoned, water, mold. I mean, everything. It just fell into disrepair. But they kept the outside of it, which is kind of cool. And I don't know if that was part of their contract or whatever. And they built backwards. They built onto it and built all new buildings around it.
Well, you said a part of the building was a part of the National Registry, right?
Oh, it was on the National Registry. The Kirkbride itself was the building. So they were like, please, we don't see this architecture anywhere anymore. Can we please save it? Can we do anything? And I think basically what it came down to was because it had been in such disrepair, there was nothing that they could do. Well, they could have salvaged it, but it would have cost the state so much money that it didn't make sense to them at the time, even though it was on the National Register of Historic Places.
Oh, I just didn't think that they could tear those kind of places down. I thought they were kind of forcibly had to come up with it. But that might have been why they kept the exterior. Maybe there's some loopholes that they found. They were exactly. We'll give you the brick, the only viable source of this place. But the rest of it is full of fucking something horrible, and we got to get rid of it.
Well, they also managed to salvage a lot of the wood from the demo, and they recycled it into the flooring and other millwork inside the what is now residential apartments. So, maybe that was a part of the deal too. Yeah. Reuse some of this stuff instead of just destroying it all. I don't know. I dug a lot into this story, and this is another one that has a lot of dark alleyways that you can find yourself lost in. So I just got the bare minimum on that part of it.
Imagine it's a huge place, and now just so many people have inhabited it, and there were different wings and everything. There's all kinds of stories that can come out of it.
Oh yeah. The underground tunnel leading up from the power plant still exists, but it's blocked at the top of the hill. On April 7th, 2007, 4 of the apartment complex buildings currently under construction atop Hawthorne Hill and 4 of the construction trailers burned down in a large fire that was seen nearly 17 miles away in Boston. Damage was confined mostly to the new buildings under construction on the eastern end, but the remaining Kirkbride spires caught fire due to the high heat. The most popular belief being that tormented spirits of the dead cursed the location and sought to burn it down.
What?
Christian Day, a prominent member of Salem's lively paranormal community. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's the guy who does all of our, okay. When I go to Salem and I go to Hex and Ohm, and I'm like, all the Christian Day stuff is here. So he commented heavily on this fire, and I thought that this was really interesting. He believes that the location is definitely haunted, but not in the way most people would assume. According to Day, When we say a place is haunted, it's not necessarily by ghosts, although the self-described clairvoyant adds that he believes at least a handful of spirits still roam the ill-fated hill. Every place where there is human activity, energy is left behind from the lives that are lived there. So a place is not so much haunted by the dead, but by the living. Day explains that the more intense the human emotions are, the more intense and lasting the energy will be. I was like, damn, this dude is so fucking... I agree. I love this.
Yeah, I'm on that page as well.
He has taken part in a paranormal investigation of Hawthorne Hill and attests to what he considers to be a very powerful vibe. He said it only makes sense because of the long tragic history of the people who suffered and despaired there. I should have looked that word up. Despaired there.
Doesn't quite sound right.
It doesn't sound right.
He said it, though, not you. So it's his bad grammar.
Let's go with that. He offered a theory that the energy that permeates the hill may be at the root of the April fire. But he also stated that the people who live up there now have nothing to worry about. It isn't mad at them. But he says it does demand respect. What we're talking about is the spirit of place. And that comes from the lives that were lived in that place, Day said. Other cultures have recognized this, and what seems paranormal to us is just business as usual in other cultures. People respected the spirit of place and paid tributes to it. He said in the highly unlikely event that he is ever hired as a paranormal consultant by the developer of Hawthorne Hill, he would recommend that they build a nice memorial that visibly honors what existed before and not downplay the past. He also suggests that the residents make small but genuine gestures. Leave some flowers at the cemetery sometime. Show that these people are not forgotten and that their memory is honored. A colleague of Day, witch and medium Leanne Merama, it sounds exotic, Merama, maybe you have to add a little flair to it. She also noted that no one was injured in the fire and that as intense as it was, it did not damage occupied homes, and says, see, that fire was about someone's grandma getting mad. She was saying, I'm here, pay attention to me.
Maybe it's just a big show, like how you make a big fire if you're stuck on an island to get somebody's attention. So it's just kind of a like, don't forget, we're here.
Right.
Keep building, that's fine and all, but, think about us while you're at it.
Right, exactly. I love this part so much because I was like, that's exactly where I think this whole thing was going too. These guys, they're onto it. I get it. As far as living in a haunted place, Day says you can build there, live there, raise families there, but you have to respect spirit of place. That's what it's all about, respect. A recent visit to the site confirms that there is a memorial at the location. This table-like overlook on a curve of the perimeter road, it is now engraved, but only to say, the institution, the people, the Danvers State Hospital. It seems to be the very minimum, and I feel that they only did that because they were obligated to do so since they had been under the spotlight from the fire in the media. The memorial that they placed at the table ledge is little comfort to the loss of what many historians felt was an architectural and historical gem, for which a designation as a National Historic Site offered it no protection. Day feels that the people who live and will live atop the hill will add to the spirit of place, saying that their joys, triumphs, tribulations, and the occasional sorrows that ordinary mortals have in their lives will also accumulate there. Isn't he cute? I just love him. In September 2007, the State Fire Marshal and the Danvers Fire Department jointly released the report on the investigation of the fire. No cause could be determined. No point of origin could be found, and strangely enough, the investigation uncovered that video footage of the site cut off moments before the first fire was thought to have even started.
So, there are people smart enough in this world to know how to mess with security cameras. That's fine. That's easy. That's simple. I think it is really hard to commit a crime and not leave some evidence to how it happened,
Yeah.
how it was at least, even if you don't leave like physical evidence, you got your gloves and you're all in whatever, your plastic suit, so that you don't
Dude.
leave any of your DNA behind. I mean, like they usually can figure out, like you can't, it's hard to burn down your house and collect the insurance money. They figure out
It
how
is.
that shit starts.
You know exactly. That is so true, man. Fire forensics is on that shit. I watch forensic science, as I've said 1,000 times, Forensic Files, and I watched this one episode where this dude said that he was working on building a new house with his wife, and they had some parts of the house finished and some parts weren't, and he went down to start the dryer and he left. And it was clear that the fire had started in the dryer area. And they were like kind of on board with that. But then the fire forensic scientist or whatever was like, something just didn't sit right. And he went back to investigate, man, because they are on that shit. Dude was trying to get all the money from his wife, her insurance policy or whatever, because it would have been an accident, and from whatever building construction loan that they had. So it would have been like bukus of money that I guess this guy would have been under. But yeah. So even if someone was super, super careful, and they could have, it's just that the actual cause of this fire was never determined, doesn't mean that someone didn't go up there and light a fire and just wasn't caught.
No, not completely. It doesn't mean that. I'm just saying that's, really strange.
It is really
because
strange.
You think that those kind of things can be figured out.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. That's why I thought it was really interesting, too, that the building construction crew had cameras on the site. And they had to, I guess, because it was an abandoned building. They did have some homeless people that were shacking up in the abandoned building. They were building new apartments. They wanted to make sure that their stuff wasn't going to get fucked with. But they took the time to put up cameras just to keep this stuff in focus. And then the footage or the camera just cut off. And then boom, fire. So they couldn't even, they tried hard, I guess, to cover all of their bases, and they still couldn't even in this case. Could be paranormal, don't know. It's just out there. Just one of those stories that I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In the nearby cemetery, hundreds of patients whose families didn't claim their bodies are buried. Some headstones only reveal numbers as opposed to names. The oldest are 5 graves from 1878. From when the hospital was opened. 6 more were buried there the following year, and the burials continued during the increase of population at the hospital. After the Middleton colony, an addition built for long-term female patients was established in 1903. A second cemetery was created at the facility in Middleton. There are approximately 770 graves between the two cemeteries, with the main cemetery at the hospital being the larger of the two. The entrance to the main cemetery is located down a steep path on the southeast side of the former state hospital property and is marked by a large boulder etched with the words, Danvers State Hospital Cemetery, the echoes they left behind. I know. The second cemetery in Middleton is about a mile and a half down the road from where the hospital once stood. The cemeteries had been abandoned and all but forgotten after the hospital closed down in 1992. Contrary to some reports about the property, there are no unmarked graves in the two cemeteries, only graves that are marked by numbers rather than names, because it is not known exactly who is buried in those particular graves. Now, we did make it out to the site of the old hospital, my husband and I, because my Wendy partner isn't in New England to go exploring graveyards with me. And I finally managed to locate and find the cemetery. There is no signage indicating the location of the cemetery, so it's a bit tricky. Like most things that I tend to do, I go without maps and hope that my intuition points me in the right direction. Also, I had already read basically where it was. I mean, I just gave you the directions. I had known, that that's where I should be able to find it. So off I went. You have to take this small gravel pathway down past the memorial ledge into what looks like a cornfield behind these residential homes. And I was wearing flip-flops too because I'm a genius.
You and your choice of shoe wear.
Never. I never
Always.
choose the right footwear. Ever. Just like when we went walking through the woods below the limp, we're like, let's go find this cave. Okay, I'm going to wear my fancy decorative boots, not like hiking boots. So there we were. We made our way down to it. We found it, the boulder with the etched statement and the hundreds of marked graves. Like I said before, either marked with a number or with a name. And there was a very nice memorial there. I have some really nice pictures. I'm not going to lie. I don't know why, but my camera took the best pictures ever while I was in the cemetery. And I couldn't post them until I did the story. And I wanted to post them so bad. I'm like, damn, did my skills as a photographer with my cell phone just finally kick in? What happened? Someone is taking care of the cemetery now.
Good. I was hoping you were going to say that because all those people that threw up a stank to keep the building up,
right.
Those are the people, okay, when they don't get the building anymore, they need to turn around and focus their efforts on these cemeteries because truly this is what needs to be remembered is these people.
The people.
That they're not forgotten. Yes, architecture's nice and all that stuff, but they're the history of it.
That is so true. Basically, it's this woman who, her name is Pat Deegan. She started and founded the Danvers State Memorial Committee. And she and them have been working to identify all of the patients that are buried in these graves and have been honoring them by giving them the named grave markers.
That's awesome.
It is fucking amazing. I was so in love with the work that she had done. She started that back in 1998. So yes, when we went there, the grass had grown up a little bit, but you could still see the tombstones and you could still see some of the numbers. Someone is maintaining it. It needed, the grass to be cut. But I mean, I'm sure when she got there, she said the place was completely overgrown and she had to search for the numbers. She was looking to see if this was the actual graveyard. So they've done a lot of work into preserving this place and to making it a respectable place to remember these people that had once unfortunately lost their lives at the Danvers State Mental Hospital. So it is a nice little area now. I didn't get any creepy vibes there. And as a matter of fact, I felt like it was nice. I felt like there should have been some signage, but then again, who knows? There's two different ways you could look at this. It might be just to keep the visitations from crazy people like me from going and looking, or maybe they don't want, to have that standing up in the middle of the apartment complex either. I really don't know. The information is out there online, so you can easily find it. But yeah, you got to walk down this gravel road through some cornfields so it doesn't look like you're going to come across the cemetery. It just looks like you're going to, and you're dead. So now, unfortunately, Danvers has never been known as a ghost hunting hotbed because the site was not open for any type of public investigations. Many paranormal investigators attempted to sneak into the compound, but many were either arrested or scared off by the cops. The state of Massachusetts and the community police would resort to routine patrols of the grounds to ensure that no one was up to anything, and apparently over 120 ghost hunters had tried and failed to gain access to the site. They were busted. And I thought it was funny because I'd seen that on several different sites, 120. So these people were tallying that shit up. They're like, let's go. Let's how far we can take this. How many of these ghost hunters are we going to catch tonight? Maybe they had bets going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they definitely knew what was going on. And so they're on it to get them all. But I hope they're not all getting arrested because that would be me. I would be trying to convince you, no, we won't get arrested. They're just going to tell us, no, get out of here. It's trespassing. And we'll be like, okay, and go home. I hope.
Well, I don't know that for a fact, but I do know that a handful of other ghost hunters had successfully snuck onto the property before demolition. So maybe they knew a guy was watching this guy. Was like, okay, he's gone. Go, go, go. And they're like, and all black and all of their equipment just rattling up the hill.
Well, what if they had a decoy? They split up the group okay, so we took my sister who's totally not into it anyways and her husband and they go up and we're like, just pretend like you're trying to get in to be a ghost. Right. And the police take them, but we're sneaking around the back. Yeah.
That is awesome. And maybe that's what happened because like I said, a couple of ghost hunters did actually somehow make it in there. They claimed to hear phantom sounds of footsteps and that unexplained moving shadows would often be seen. Isn't that crazy? But I couldn't find any documentation out there. So either it was just all personal experiences. Maybe when they did their decoy, they didn't have all their equipment because they had to leave all their equipment with their decoy. Like, look, no, they're the legit ghost hunters. I don't know, hopping fences. Maybe you can't take everything with you. So,
Oh, I'm certain. And then also, you're probably trying to get through the building fast enough before you get caught. So, like, how much of that time are you taking? Shit, it's hard to document shadows too.
it
You know,
is.
you see it with your eyes,
Yeah.
and you're like, I know I'm looking at something,
No
but
shit.
if you don't
Yeah.
have a really nice camera, it's probably not picking it up. And so
Yeah.
it is kind of, I just saw that with my eyes, you know?
That is such a huge bummer. And you're right, because that's happened to me. We'll have our fancy schmancy little laser grid out there, and it's on its cute little tripod, and it's doing its laser light show for us, right? It's like green stars down a dark hallway, and you're filming it with what you think is your best night vision thing. And you see the shadow move across the stars just like everyone says is going to happen. You see it with your own eyes. You're like, do you see it? Yep. Do you see it? Yep. Everyone agrees. You're like, I'm filming that shit. Boom. Everyone high fives. You go home that night, you watch it, and you're like, where's the shadow?
Did
the
I
fuck
imagine that whole thing?
Did we all like high fived at that moment? We all saw it, but it's not there. Can't document that shit. So you're right. And that could be why that's not out there. Shit is hard to document.
Gotta have that Travel Channel money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and those kind of like high tech pieces of equipment, not like what the Wendy and Chris Fund can afford. But we're trying, guys. Come on. And yet there is one eyewitness report of manifested hauntings that has surfaced over the years. Geraldine Levasseur, I think. She grew up on the grounds. Her father, Gerald Richards, was a hospital administrator. Levasseur recalls seeing apparitions angrily scowling at her and her sister as a child. And one time, while she was of high school age, her bed covers were yanked off of her in the middle of the night without any warning. Geraldine Levasseur once even saw a ghost of a woman in the attic. While the scowling faces were definitely frightening, Levasseur said that she never felt threatened by the ghosts either. So just shit happening.
That's a tough little girl.
She was a tough little girl. She's just like, no, give my blankets back.
So I'd be like, what are you looking at? That would be so uncomfortable.
Well, I wonder if she just got so used to it. You know how our cats are staring at us and we're like, ugh. Quit looking at me, cat, scowling at me. I'll feed you when it's time to eat. Maybe she's just like the same thing. She's like, quit scowling at me, ghost. I can't do anything for you. In another strange case, found to be so compelling that it ended up in the Journal of Forensic Sciences, let me shift the story to the ghost of Margaret Schilling. A patient of the Ridges Continued Care Unit, Schilling, then 53 years old, had general freedom of movement and no serious behavioral problems. She was a model patient, her behavior unremarkable in every way. But on December 1st, 1978, she failed to show up for dinner, having disappeared without any sign. Within a few hours, an extensive search was launched, with staff crisscrossing the wards in search of her. They didn't find her that night, which worried many because it was brutally fucking cold out. It was wintertime in New England. But it wasn't until January 11th, 1979, more than a month later, that workers found Schilling's body in the attic of an abandoned wing. There was no sign of foul play. Schilling appeared to have taken off her clothes, folded them neatly, before lying down to die on the cold floor. No one could say how long she'd been dead, but despite the cold winter, the room had been warm enough to allow for significant decay.
Listen, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so I get it. So maybe she felt like this was her time. Maybe she took her clothes off because she knew that would help. Because of the cold, she knew her body might go into shock, and then that would help for her to move on faster.
Maybe.
Or she just felt more free naked. I mean, some people are into that.
Yes.
But I don't know if that's not what I would do. So, I mean, I don't want to be found naked, and I don't feel free naked. So,
no. Yeah.
But that's my own, like, prudy self, like, I guess, and just self-conscious and everything. So I find it odd, but, there's so many killers that we've read about that do very odd things, like,
Right.
little, that's just odd. So it's like, did somebody else put her up there like that?
There's so many holes here. We could pick at this one forever because A, it was a mental institution that already had some pretty nasty rumors about some shit that was going on there. B, she was a model patient. It seemed like she had her wits about her. Unless, like you said, she just felt it was her time to go. And some people do have that sense. I mean, you had a whole story about some weird place. What was it in? Not
Sweden.
New Zealand, right? It was Sweden. Yeah. Where they just kind of wander there and lay down to die. So, I mean, she could have had that sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
But.
And some people do really enjoy being nude. I don't know why this keeps popping in my head, but did you know Howard Stern proposed to his now wife, his second wife, naked? And he really wanted to do it that way.
What? Why?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
I don't know. That's just special to him. Like, he thought it was more beautiful that way. Like, I guess showing all of him to her.
Right.
I would be like, put your fucking clothes on.
Can we go to a restaurant?
I would have been fine doing this outside at a sunset or something like that. But no.
Right. On the beach. But you have to put your clothes on. Well, that is really interesting. I didn't know that. And good for him because he still managed to marry Betho even though he proposed naked. So whatever.
Right. She was like,
she was all about it.
Okay, whatever. I bet she still thought it was strange, but she was like, it's okay. I love you. But I'm just saying that some people, I don't know, like just being their all natural self it's important and special to them. And so I guess I could see going out that way.
Right. Or, I mean, I do think she likes a good comedian. I think she has to be with Howard Stern. So maybe it was something else.
The woman in the attic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let's go back to Margaret Schilling. Yes. The woman in the attic. So she left behind no clues as to how she'd ended up there or what had led to her death. But she did leave behind a gruesome mystery. When workers removed her decomposing corpse from the concrete floor, they found a stain in the shape of Schilling's body, a ghostly outline in chalky white, ringed by a fainter, darker outline. And despite how hard workers tried to clean the floor, the stain would not come off. The stain of Margaret Schilling remained until the buildings were torn down and became the source of many ghost tales and additional rumors about the hospital, though through forensics, it was determined that the stain was likely a result of a process called adiposer, which is the
using my technique. Say it faster.
adiposer.
They can't tell what you're saying. Doesn't matter. That's crazy.
It is crazy. Which that is the breakdown during decomposition of the body's fat into soap.
Yeah. Fight Club.
Yeah. Fight Club.
But it's just insane that stain was there like that whole time. Like anybody could have just went up there and been like, you want to see the stain of a decomposed body?
Yes, it was still there. While usually adiposia requires moist, enclosed conditions, like a coffin buried in the right kind of soil, the forensic team's best guess was that Schilling's corpse had undergone some similar process despite the less than ideal conditions of the attic.
Now, this is where it's fishy. No fucking way. It's going to be freezing cold in that attic.
I totally agree. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it is the attic. So I assume it's just like any attic. Concrete and wood. It's not like it's enclosed. There's bedding, there's padding, there's an air conditioner, there's a heating unit. Not especially in winter. So it's cold as fuck outside. It's probably cold as fuck in the attic. She still managed to turn into something that doesn't generally take place unless it's under like very right conditions. Like I said,
they said a coffin in certain soil. So they mean enclosed and around some kind of, what am I trying to say? I'm not a fucking scientist, but it's installation, you know? And she's just laying on a concrete floor in a desolate attic.
So
in
maybe
the winter.
She was hot because she took her clothes off. Somebody didn't like kill her and move her there because the outline of her body indicates how long she had actually been there. right?
True. I mean, she had to have decomposed. I don't know. I mean, actually, how long does it take for that stain to set in?
I don't know.
What if they did have her somewhere else, like in the basement somewhere, and then moved her up to the attic?
I mean, that would, I guess, make the most sense, or in one of those tunnels or something, because it seemed like you needed to be in a warmer environment for this to take place. Now, like I said, this was in the Journal of Forensic Science. I don't know what year, whatever. It is referred to as the stain in the Journal of Forensic Science. So it probably goes way, way, way deep into that story.
With people that know more about what they're talking about than us. So, I mean, I guess if they didn't sit there and say, I bet there was foul play involved and they just couldn't figure out how so, then I guess it's possible for that to happen.
It's so weird, though. It just seems like, like her body just decomposed within a month's time in a not so natural environment for that kind of thing to occur. It's very odd. And given some of the things that have been said to go on there, it's like, was somebody, messing around with something else, some other kind of technique that failed? I don't know. I'm just speculating because it's creepy as fuck.
Like when they make the mutants in X-Men. And they
turn
that guy into water.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes. They were trying to do another Weapon X, and they're like, your bones are going to be just like boom, and you're just going to be like clawing through stuff. But it didn't work out so well, I guess. And one thing that I thought was interesting too, because she was obviously her body was found decomposing in the attic. I wonder if that was the ghost that Geraldine had reported seeing while she was a child. Because she said that she saw a ghost of a woman in an attic.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Well, it's the only logical story coming out of there, so we'll just connect it so that you can give it a name, even if it's not.
There we go. We solved that case. Again, the team is on it.
Any ghost hunter would do that. If you could investigate this location and they said, well, somebody said they saw a ghost up here and we know who died up here. We have a name of someone who died up here, even though other people were housed up there and could have died.
Yeah.
But they're going to go up there and ask for Margaret constantly.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, I'm just doing what everybody else would do. It's Margaret.
Right. It's Margaret. So while the number of documented paranormal experiences may be low, there's a great deal of potential ghostly activity at the hospital. From 1920 to 1945, the hospital and its staff committed such terrible atrocities that this surely would have left a negative energy and massive psychic imprint in the dark and decaying halls of Danvers, which, as I mentioned earlier, already had a dark beginning since Judge Hawthorne had once sentenced so many to death and lived right in the same area. I think this place could use a good cleansing if it already hasn't gone through one. I just think that's just me spitballing here. Now, I have to mention that this story was also covered by one of our favorite storytellers, Aaron Mahnke, on Lore episode 6. It was called Echoes. Yeah, we're going back in the day.
Way back. I loved his first episodes, though.
Oh, man, yeah. And if anyone has listened to that episode and was also as horrified as I was, there might have been something that stood out to you as being left out from my story. I left out something that I personally felt was incredibly spooky, which was the story that Aaron told about 115 patients from the 80s going missing under the hand of another allegedly sadistic doctor. While I was researching and searching for more information on those missing 115 patients, I found that I was not the only one that was super hung up on this part of the story. But it seems that story was actually spun from a very convincing, picture-included creepypasta. But I mean, come on. With as much dark shit that had been happening here, it seemed very likely that this story was quite genuine, especially since we have the confirmed patient, Margaret Schilling, that had mysteriously disappeared. That was confirmed. So for him to have found this other story about 115 other people, it all just made sense. Surely it had to be real.
And this was before he hired his assistant, his research assistant.
Episode 6. Yeah, this is way back in the day. Oh, yeah.
Oh, but that's just so funny. So he fell for a creepypasta is what you're telling me. And I told you like a month ago or whatever that I was working on a story and it took me days to realize it was a fucking creepypasta. Right? I mean, it's probably haunted, but just not to the level that I thought it was. And I was so into it. I was like, this is such a good story. This is crazy. Yeah. I hope Chris has never heard of this before. And then I had to ask my oldest, hey, wait. If it's on creepypasta, does that mean it's absolutely not true?
Right,
or is there some truth to it?
Right.
Because this guy says it's true on creepypasta, and he's like, Mom, it's not true. Me, the ghost hunter, is asking my 15-year-old if this is true or not. And he's like, stop it. And but to find out that Mr. Aaron Mackey fell for it too.
Look, I had to mention that. I have to get this out of the way before anyone gets the wrong idea. I love lore and Aaron Mahnke. I'm totally not naysaying his research or his podcast. I feel like that could happen to anyone while researching every rabbit hole for more information. Wendy just said that she was going for the same thing.
I totally almost fell for it. I mean, it was so down because I wait until the last minute to do my podcast. I mean, you almost got that creepypasta story. And I love you, Aaron Mahnke. I love lore. It's a great podcast. So I am not judging.
No. Look, I listened to the story and I had to find out more about those 115 people but nothing I was turning up was coming up with that. I finally found an old Reddit where someone was like, what the hell? I can't find anything on this 115. More people had added to it and was like, yeah, apparently it was this creepypasta wiki or whatever. And then you click the link and there was the picture and I'm like, oh, can we please make this real? It's so creepy. I want to post this picture. Nope. It is someone's amazing imagination that just latched on to a creepy place and added to it. So
that was exactly what happened to me. I was like, I'm trying to find out more about this. There has to be more. They say it was the police were there and everything. And I'm like, somehow it keeps taking me back to this same website. There's no other websites talking about it. And I found a Reddit thread that was like, they were telling the story kind of in a shortened form. And somebody was like, hey, I've seen this story on Creepypasta before. And the guy replied and was like, yeah, that was me. I put that on there. And so I was like,
I'll take credit for that. Thanks.
Wait, is that the only? So wait.
Yeah, so it is out there. It will get you, especially for us and even for someone as prominent as Lore. But I mean, that was back in the day. Now he has a research assistant who I guess is probably going down all those rabbit holes and making sure that they're not actually going to report on any creepypasta. But it'll still get you. I mean, you are just trying to explore every avenue, especially even as a ghost hunter, trying to get all the tidbits of information so that when you do go to a place, you'll be prepared and try to interact as much as possible. This would have been one of those stories the ghost would have been like, no.
Like, what is she talking about?
Remember that. Hey, Janice, do you recall? No, let's check with Frank. No, nobody knows. Sorry, we can't help you. Okay, so now for more fiction. In 2001, the horror film Session 9 was filmed inside the abandoned hospital building and tunnel system. Mm-hmm. Yes. The movie tells the story of an asbestos remediation crew, which was hired to start renovating inside the abandoned insane asylum. Needless to say, bad things happen right away. I saw Session 9. It's a creepy movie, so don't watch it if you scare easily, but watch it definitely because of the hospital. You can't see this place anymore aside from that or the pictures that you'll find from our friends in the Urbex world who took those pictures before it was torn down. Also, Halloween is coming up, so aside from Wendy, who doesn't love a good horror flick? Oh, and please watch it because it is the hospital. Like the drive up it doesn't look like this anymore. Clearly, I already told you the hospital's gone, but the hill is there. You get to the hospital and you see the hospital before they tore it down. It was all abandoned. And then they meet some guy who takes him into the hospital and he basically just spills all of the historic information on the hospital, just like I did in this podcast. So it's almost like reliving it. but not with my entertaining voice. You just have to watch this old boring dude. No, I'm just kidding. The movie's it's interesting, but it's exciting to know that you can see this building as it was before it was completely torn down in movie form.
That is really cool.
It is.
I might have to skim it for that.
I think you should. I would say just the beginning, but no, because the whole film was inside this hospital, basically, or outside the hospital. So, and it's really not that terrifying, just so you know.
You're lying to me. But I did a couple of podcast episodes. I told you I was watching a horror series, I guess you'd call it, on Netflix. And I finished that. So, every once in a while.
Yeah.
I'll tell you real quick. When I was watching, it's The Haunting of Hill House. And I'm watching it and I'm working out because that's like when I watch TV is when I'm working out. So I'm on my elliptical, arms, legs, we're moving. And then there's a jump scare and I almost fucking fall off my machine basically because I'm actually jumping and then like still moving.
Are you serious? Oh my God.
It was so stupid.
I bet that's hilarious though. Because you were into it that much that you weren't expecting anything. Yeah.
I hate jump scares. They're so dangerous.
They do have a little bit of that in this movie. So that you know. You can be prepared when you're on your elliptical and you watch this.
Yeah, maybe don't watch it on my elliptical. Got it.
I also need to mention that during the filming, David Caruso, who played Phil, reported that he saw something pass by his window when shooting inside the Bonner Medical Building. But he didn't want to tell anybody at the time because he was worried that other people would start looking at him strange. Like, okay, dude, you're losing your mind. But also actor Peter Mullen, who plays Gordon, said strange things happened while on the set. He claims that while filming on the roof, a voice in his head told him to jump off to see what would happen.
No, that's not good.
Isn't that? Well, I mean, you can't go to the place now, but I thought that was wild that he mentioned that. And if you do go and watch the movie, you'll see why I think that that's wild. This guy who plays Gordon, he's Scottish. He's got a Scottish accent.
Sold. I'm watching it now. Does he has the accent in the movie?
In the movie, yes.
Okay.
I knew that would get you on board. Done and done. I should have started with that. And just a side note, they added very little props to the movie. Almost everything that you see from being in the hospital was already there.
That's cool.
It is. You have to see this movie. The hospital was also featured in the 1958 film Home Before Dark. I have not seen that one, but IMDb gives it a slightly better rating than Session 9. So check that one out maybe. In the game Painkiller, which is a PC game, in one of the levels called Asylum, it's based on the central administration section. While the outside is a faithful reproduction, the inside is not. I'm just putting that out there for any of our gamer fans who also listen to the podcast. And last but not least, the Danvers State Hospital is believed by literary historians to have served as inspiration for the infamous Arkham Sanatorium from H.P. Lovecraft's The Thing on the Doorstep. Lovecraft's Arkham, in turn, is the inspiration for Arkham Asylum, which is the psychiatric hospital that is well known from the DC universe. It is referred by name in the short story Pickman's Model and in The Shadow over Innsmouth.
I don't know any of that other stuff you're talking about,
but you know what I'm talking about with DC, right?
Batman.
Yeah. Batman.
I got you, DC.
You know?
Yeah.
Thanks to H.P. Lovecraft's dark yet beautifully imaginative mind, I get to tie my story into one of my favorite DC characters. Wendy just name dropped Batman, which is great since this building actually resembles a bat. Unfortunately, as many of the completed apartment buildings now standing at Hawthorne Hill have been named for great American authors such as Nathaniel Hawthorne and John Steinbeck, none were named after H.P. Lovecraft. Danvers State Hospital was one of the most notorious asylums during its time, which is really devastating to think since the building served the noble purpose of helping the mentally ill. As things changed throughout its life, it became this really horrible place, which manifested the ghosts we believe remain there today.
You know, I really wish that they would have a memorial for those people. I mean, the cemetery, they're being respectful, they're keeping them up, and they did put up something. You know, a simple monument it says a lot. I get it. But just, how far we've come with mental health, and we can go so much farther as well. Like that this is what these people had to suffer through, the trial and error of really awful shit. Like that should be recognized.
It should. You're right. As far as the cemetery goes and what the building constructors did for, I guess, the people that constructed the apartment complex, they put up just a little pathway. But while I was there, I was just like, it's so void of any like real like respect to the people here. And I couldn't figure out like if that was supposed to be the memorial or not. It wasn't until I actually made my way into the graveyard itself that there's these 3 about waist high walls that encompasses all of the names of the 770 people that should be found between the 2 cemeteries. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they actually did that or if Pat Deegan and her committee went through putting that together for those people. I know that they're the ones that are working to memorialize each and every person that is buried there by giving those graves a name. So I kind of feel like it is because of her that memorial exists. But otherwise, I think that the builders just kind of did what they could do to put those apartments in there so they could make their paycheck and go on with their lives.
Well, you can also imagine there's probably a lot of people that do not want that associated with their apartment, so they don't want that memorial lingering around. They invite people over for a dinner party and they're like, hey, what's that? Before they go inside and they read about it and then come in and be like, I heard this was a mental institution. That's crazy. And that's all they talk about at dinner. And that person's not into that,
Yeah.
And it's not what they wanted to focus on. But
how could you move into a place like that and not expect to be confronted by that type of a memory every single time you drive up to your place? I don't know. I guess it's different for someone like us who is very much so into respecting the dead and communicating with the dead, that we see it, I think, a little bit differently than someone who's just looking for a nice new apartment, in an upcoming area.
Well, yeah, and it's like right there on that hill and stuff too. So I bet it has a pretty nice view and everything.
Great view.
Yeah.
So funny. That's what my husband said too. He's like, "Look, the view's great. Who cares?"
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's probably what they were thinking.
So maybe not just right out front in front of the building for everyone to see, like their guests coming in, but if there's courtyards within the building that's kind of really just for the residents, there has to be some kind of memorial to these people because like Christian Day said, you have to respect what was once there.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to get along with any spirits that might be lingering. So, if there happens to be anybody that lives in those apartments that are listening to this podcast and you're having trouble, first of all, go to our shop at the Spirit Emporium on Etsy, our website, and buy some stuff. But also, maybe you need to think about, like what he said, putting up a memorial to respect those people.
I loved what he said. I thought that his information was very insightful. And I've never talked to this man at all, but I've bought plenty of stuff that has his name on it. I was hoping to have a prop for the show because but I'm confined to my little area. So all my good stuff, I guess, is up in my bedroom, keeping all the spirits out. But I thought it was very insightful and matter of fact. That's what you need to do. I want to go back and pay my respects. I'll bring some flowers because this story was a hard one for me. I really have a hard time with hospitals in general. I guess I just imagine all of those people there that were just left. These 2 graves that I'm talking about, these are the bodies of the people whose family members didn't come to claim.
Right.
They didn't exist anymore. They had all died, or I hate to say it, they didn't care. No. And it's such a hard emotion, to realize that someone could be just left somewhere. Just, fend for yourself, guy. Hopefully things will work out for you. So I think it's beautiful, that Pat has gone and done what she's done to, respect the graves. And I think that that's what needs to be done, just as you said. And as Christian Day had said, it's all about respect.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. She's a hero for sure. That's really awesome of her.
Right.
And it is a beautiful story and it needs to be told. I know it was hard for you and it is hard because these people were just kind of abandoned there and they were treated very badly because that kind of science wasn't understood. But it's something that needs to be repeated so that people know what it was like for other people when they're going out and they're ghost hunting in places such as this. You know, you can't do it at this one anymore. But if you sneak into Lynchworth, or if you go into Waverly wasn't exactly the same thing, but towards the end it was used as like an old folks home. And or if you go and do ghost hunts at Trans-Allegheny, and that's exactly what it was used for. It's the same thing. You need to be respectful. Like, think of those people and remember them. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Just like Wendy said, you can't go to this hospital anymore. It's gone. People are living there, their apartments. So don't be, sneaking up into these people's homes, trying to communicate with the spirits. You just can't do that shit. That's illegal.
But
However,
you can friend somebody that lives there
Right.
only for that purpose.
You knew exactly where I was going with that one, didn't you?
Where did you say you lived?
Right, exactly. We can be friends. However, if you were one of those investigators that I mentioned that got into that bad boy before they tore it down, write to us and give us a good scare by telling us your story. It's creaturesofthenightparanormal@gmail.com. I'm sure you've got something to say if you did manage to make it in there. We would love to hear about it. And we'll post pictures from the time that I went up to the cemetery. Like I said, they're such like photogenic. Like the time Chris turned
your
into
best work ever.
Yes, it's my best work. I'm going to have to water stamp those. They're beautiful. Very awesome pictures. I'll post those on a very awesome site. It's known as Instagram and
Twitter and Facebook.
And to see those beautiful pictures, you go to COTN_paranormal on Instagram, COTN paranormal on Facebook and Twitter. No underscore for those two.
Awesome. I can't wait to see these amazing photos that you took. I can't wait to check out your skills.
Everyone's going to be like, those pictures aren't worth a shit. What's wrong with her? Like, oh, seriously, they're the best pictures I've ever taken.
What was she on that day? No. I'm sure they are very beautiful. You usually do take very good pictures. You just hit the timing just right. I guess it's because you never sleep in. And so you're always out there with nobody else. You've gotten some really great pictures because you're all about getting up and getting it done, unlike me who lays in bed until 9 o'clock on the weekend. Then I'm like, why is it so bright and hot outside? I can't go tour anything.
Oh, yeah, because it's so hot.
It's too late. If I would just get my lazy ass up.
That could have been why the homeowners were looking at me all cockeyed and stuff when I was walking behind their house at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Another ghost hunter, damn it. I'm like, no, I'm wearing flip-flops. Clearly, I'm not a ghost hunter. Clack, clack. Who'd go down here in their flip-flops?
Worst ghost hunter ever.
Worst ghost hunter ever. Yeah,
No.
that's us. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you coming back and listening to another episode. I don't even know what one we're on now. Are we on? This is number 78. Are we like around the corner?
Didn't I tell you the other day in a text? I just believe everything you say. I almost was like, is it? No, I mean, like, this should be 54.
Something? All right.
Maybe.
Sure. Maybe
No.
54.
That's
Maybe not.
53. No,
Since
I have
not-
no idea about that. It's 78, like you said.
All right. I'll
Damn,
go
we're
with 70.
doing so well. Anyways,
right.
yeah. Thank you so
Cool.
much for telling that story. I have to tell you, I love all the twists and turns. You're like, hey, it's about the Salem witch trials. No, it's not. It's Danvers. Hey, you get a little deeper in. You're like, creepypasta. I'm like, what? Somebody else fell for it. This is the best story ever. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And hopefully come back next week. We'll be doing this again.
Yes, definitely. Thanks so much, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.